Good afternoon, traders. This is Christian from Market Trade Group, and it is Monday, February 13th, almost Valentine's Day, almost CPI report for tomorrow, which is the big number that everybody seems to be waiting for. But I'll tell you, overall, theme of the day that I have right here is that S&P finds support exactly where it needed to, and we had a little bit of a shakeout last week, which is quite normal, I think, for the move that we've seen over the last basically since the beginning of the year. I mean, you're going to have weeks where we're going to back and fill a little bit, and I think it was kind of interesting to see where we stopped. Risk disclaimer in front of you: everything that we're going through is for information purposes only, not giving out any advice or recommendations. Please make sure that you read the full risk disclaimer right there. All right, so let's look at a couple things here. So this should be a quick video for tonight. Here's what I'm referring to. S&P found support right at the 40.70 level. That's something that if you're a regular viewer of my videos, or if you're a member of Tribeca Trade Group, you've heard me say 40.71. 40.71 as I just kind of drilled that number, into everybody's heads, because if you're using volume at price, that's exactly where we should have found support. Now the question always is, whenever there's a dip, is the dip going to hold? Are we going to bounce on here? And so far, I mean, without kind of thinking about tomorrow's events and economics and UFOs and any other thing that might be going on, this is pretty good. I mean, breadth was strong for the day. We're going to want to see breadth kind of come back, because I don't have the new NYSE McClellan summation index numbers, but we just started a bearish crossover, so today might undo that crossover with the 10-day. I use the 10-day moving average, but you could use it any way that you want to. You could use any moving average that helps you, but I use the 10-day moving average, so that might uncross itself, and we'll see what we get for the rest of the week. But this is where we needed to hold, and so far we're holding that. Full green bar for the day. Remember, of course, that back on February 2nd, I believe, was where we hit upside resistance. We hit, there was supply up there, right? And that's where we've been rejected so far. So a little bit of backing and filling. Always on the 1-hour chart, we can also find some levels. And if you notice on the top left of my screen, it says 80% rule. So we got into the value area right around like 9 o'clock this morning, and since then we've been kind of traveling through it. So 41.68. I mean, that's even a level that could be taken out pre-market, depending on what the CPI number is, and that 80% rule could be complete pretty darn soon. So I would keep that in mind for tomorrow. That's going to be resistance. Notice if we go back to last week for a minute, we hit that resistance, which was the top of value for the week, and that's as far as we went. So I would be very interested if we do get to 41.68, right, what we do at that point. All right. A couple other things. Well, there's a few other things to kind of go over, but bonds, right? I mean, that was really in focus last week. There was a pretty aggressive move, like this is 30-year bond futures that I have up, but if you look at TLT, that was down 3.1% last week, and today TLT rebounded about 80 basis points, so just under 1%, but it's going to have to get back above 128.10. So that's going to be important to see if we can kind of retake that level. If we do get a little bit more of bond strength, right, we're kind of coming back to this version point of control on the 1-hour. Again, this is kind of a decision area, but even further, it's going to be this 128 level that's going to come into play. So I mentioned CPI report. I'll kind of give you my thoughts about the CPI report very quickly. Let me just zoom in here a little bit so that you could read this a little bit better on your screen. But we've got an FIB, small business optimism, right? Nobody's going to be watching that, but I think that'll be interesting because again, it does tell us how small businesses are kind of surviving in this market, right? In this environment, or what they think about this environment, I should say, right? Not surviving is not the right word to use. But the CPI, right? So the number that for the month is 0.5. So I kind of think I was on Benzinga earlier, and I was talking a little bit about this, that, it could really be that, the market, once this number came out, this survey or estimate number, may have freaked out the market a little bit. Because that's a hot number that they're expecting. So I don't really know. I'm not a CPI expert. I'm not any one of these economic reports. I don't drill into, way into these reports. I leave that for other people to do. So I'm not sure why it's such a hot number, considering that the previous month was a negative 0.1, and then of course was revised up towards the end of last week. But we'll see what this number is. And the way that I would think about it too is, a lot of times what I tend to do is run a scenario analysis. What I mean by that is, okay, well, what do I think happens if the number comes out in line with expectations? If the number comes out in line, like somewhere 0.4, 0.5, then I think that you have more of kind of what we're doing right now, taking 2 steps forward, 1 step back with the market, that kind of thing. And you might see different areas of the market outperform, right? I mean, I see on a lot of my charts, the industrials look pretty good, the financials look pretty good, the semis look decent. Other areas that have been strong, last year, insurance names, right? Those remain very, very strong. And of course, like, the energy, metals and mining, right? That continues to look pretty good. Steel names. So if inflation's comes in a little hot like that, 0.5%, the Fed will have to raise interest rates 1, maybe 2 more times, maybe even more than that, right? They said that they're going to be data dependent, and we could argue what we think is really going to take place, but right, that's the information that we have at hand right now. Now, if the number comes in light, if it comes in if it comes in around 0, what do you think is going to happen? I mean, my guess is that you're going to see probably growth names do pretty well in that environment. And if the number comes in, higher than 0.5, right? Again, what do you think is going to happen? Well, probably we'll see some more volatility, because again, it just has so many, there's so many eyes and people making decisions off of this type of thing. All right. And then don't forget, on Thursday, we still get, well, even on Wednesday, we get retail sales, and then we also get the PPI report that comes out on Thursday. So this is a bigger week of economic reports. So again, if we didn't have any of this data, I would say, going back to the S&P, that this is exactly where we, should have found support, and we did, and we bounced. So I think that that's pretty positive. A couple other things too. I mean, I put together, I was away most of this weekend, but I put together a watch list for members this morning. And, another area that I found very interesting, which I've been talking about now for a couple of weeks, really nothing's been happening. I tweeted this out February 3rd, and I said, hey, we're up against this downtrend line. We did actually get over this. Let's see if we can get some follow through. Right. I think it would be very interesting to see the Dow stocks, which have kind of, just been kind of locked in this triangle type pattern. If they could kind of break out here, I think it would be interesting. Right. And if you go through some of the Dow components, right, this one called Apple, is doing quite fine, after this earnings report, big move up, but it's just kind of digesting. Right. If we can manage to hang in here, right, there's a level that I think is important, which is right around this, very easy. I like, keep it simple, very easy levels to watch, but this 153.60 level, right? And if it could break that, then I see 167 on the 1 hour chart, right? So I don't talk about Apple a lot. Now, remember, I just mentioned 167. You can pause and go back on the video, but also there's same thing. There's overhead supply at right around 166.50, right? So that could be where Apple ultimately gets to. There isn't the second extension away from the February value area. So I don't have any Apple on, but I just find it kind of interesting. One name I do have on is Boeing. Boeing is also very similar to what the Dow is doing, just kind of hanging around. Since this thing had earnings, it really hasn't done much, but I've been trying to be patient with it. And, sometimes that's the key. So I do like Boeing here. I do like a lot of the aerospace names. That's something that you've heard me say a lot. SPR had a pretty good day today, was up 8%. So very interesting. And if we look at some of the other areas, that did well today, once again, the home builders, right? Just when you think the home builders are going to tip over, right? There was a lot of put activity towards the end of last week. But they, once again, I forgot to mention that when I talked about what sectors have been doing quite well. But XHB is another one of those sectors, probably the most under-owned group, I would think. But they are sitting above value, and maybe they get up to 73.50. But and this is the home building ETF. There's actually more. There's a decent amount of retail companies in this, but that's what was doing the best today. Retail also came back pretty decently, up 2.3%. Your energy names also doing pretty well. Here's what the oil services ETF looks like. Right, this was one of my charts to watch, kind of coming into this week. Right, this is very close to also taking the next leg higher. So there's some opportunities that I think are in some energy stocks. Here is our watch list that I put, just like I said, I put together this morning. I also like some of these auto part names. There's going to be a couple of them that report earnings this week, again, just to look at something a little bit different, right? But I put out this chart towards the end of last week, or we talked about it in the room last week. This GPC, which was like a darling of 2022, looks like it's taken some time digesting, and it's back above all those moving averages. Now it does have to get through that 177.90 VPOC, but pretty strong. And then there's another one too that reports this week, which is Sonic Automotive, which actually made new highs today. So another one, right? And I went through a bunch of these on Friday for members to put out some charts. But the auto parts and the auto dealers stocks are pretty strong. And again, we saw that strength for a lot of those names in 2022. The solar actually was on the list today too. And then even tech did fine today too. It's already talked about Apple, but Microsoft had a big day again today. All right, so that's it. I mean, the last group, we Cadence reported after the close today, CDNS. Right, and it looks like that name might be, on the verge of breaking out. It's up to 191.50. Such a solid name. This name kind of gets forgotten in that space. But again, if you don't want to mess with the individual names, XSD is the ETF. I just like how I really like how it's shaping up, or how it's been shaping up on the weekly chart. It did break its 2023 value area, something that the overall indices have not done yet. Right. Talked about how we've been in a sideways, even though we're off to this great start so far this year. It's still, in my opinion, a sideways market until we break 42.57 to the upside. But certainly there are different areas of the market that are showing some nice relative strength, and I think semis is one of them. Analog devices will also be this week. Lattice reported earnings. I think they're up a little bit, but I don't think this trades too much. Oh, might be down a little bit. Let's see. I don't think it's on big volume, but I would watch it for this name, 83.11. A lot of people were watching this like a week ago. Again, went right up to that virgin point of control and paused. So we'll see what it does on its earnings call. But I think another one to watch in the semi group. All right, guys, have a great night, and see you tomorrow.